Yo, what's going on, guys? Today, bringing you Bullony Basketball. What an off season. Pretty crazy. My favorite player retires over the off season, and really near the end of it. But just I feel like a lot of stuff happened. I mean, the Paul George goes to the Sixers. Like the Pelicans get DeJounte Murray. Like, there's just like so many things that took place this offseason. So I feel like it's already going to shape up to be a pretty weird season. And I think that's probably the best way to put it. There's so many people like that maybe were legends in past years and stuff like that now they're on teams where it's like that jersey looks weird on them. But today we're going to do my predictions. And yeah, I guess kind of just to start off like with this season of Bullony Basketball. I'm kind of focusing on trying to make it a little bit different. Like not too different, but I know previous seasons the episodes do go longer. So I'm gonna try my best to keep this season the episodes like really not as long. Still maybe around like the half hour mark ideally. But if it gets over like an hour and stuff like that, like I know some people like that, but I know some people also want to they hear the stuff like right away. You know what I mean? So maybe part of that is the editing. And yeah, I think I'll just try to like make that more of an emphasis this season. Kind of not like bouncing around like whatever the point may be, but like just kind of like maybe getting right to it. Because so people can hear what they want to hear. But obviously right now it's the first episode. First episode is always usually about predictions, and I have many for this season. But we're only going to focus on the standing predictions and then the playoff predictions. Well, and the award predictions too. I only did the major awards. That's usually what I only do because all NBA now they got like requirements for a certain amount of games, and if someone played like 64 games and missed it, like I don't know. I mean, like that's a little unfortunate. It probably wouldn't affect the standings too much anyway, so like you really wouldn't know who falls into that category. But we'll just get right into this. So starting with the standings predictions, I think I'm gonna actually just have it all on the screen at one time. And I'll run through the names. I mean, I'll show the records, but I'll start off in the East. So the East predictions for the standings, and then I'll kind of talk just a little bit about what I want to talk about. So here we go. Starting from 1 to 15 in the East, I got, and hold your horses because some people might think it's a little questionable in some areas, but I'll explain those things. So 1 to 15 in the East, I got Milwaukee, Cleveland, Orlando, Boston, Indiana, Philadelphia, New York, Miami, Atlanta, Charlotte, Detroit, Chicago, Toronto, Brooklyn, Washington. So to start off, Milwaukee being 1, I do think they will be 1. I think last season they kind of got a raw deal. Giannis got hurt in the playoffs. Dame was also playing hurt for some of the games, and then even Middleton had like a little injury in another game. I know there are some concerns about Middleton, like maybe moving forward and stuff like that, but I think Dame's going to have like a bounce back season a little bit. I feel like people are really not giving Giannis much of a chance to succeed for some reason, which is weird because he's one of the best players in the league. Like prior to when the Nuggets won, we were calling Giannis the best player in the NBA. So I don't know. I still think he's going to have a great year. I think the Bucks added some depth. They got Gary Trent Jr., they got DeLon Wright. They made some key additions in areas that they needed. I think they're going to be a pretty good team. I think people are sleeping on them too a little bit. And I also have Cleveland too because I think people are also sleeping on them. You got to remember, they were the second, third seed pretty much the whole year last year until Donovan Mitchell got hurt. And on top of that, they were playing exceptionally well without Evan Mobley and without Darius Garland, right? I know they're a pretty similar team. They didn't make like too many offseason moves, but I still think like if they have that consistency, if they're healthy, They're obviously going to be a playoff team, and they're obviously going to be somewhere in the top 4 in the Eastern Conference. I put them 2 because I think they will have a little bit better injury luck this season. Orlando at 3, I think they're poised to take that next leap. Like last year was about like kind of getting into the playoff picture. This year, I think it's about asserting themselves as one of those teams. Everyone wants to talk about Milwaukee and Boston as Philly, and Philly is the big 3, and New York even. But even like Cleveland more than them, Indiana, but like Orlando's a really good team, and they have a great defense. I think if they could, find the offensive rhythm with their team, they would. I think they'd be set. And I mean, I think some of their young players are going to get a little bit better, and they have a little bit more consistency now as well. So number 4, this is where I have Boston, and the reason I have Boston here, it's not necessarily because they can't be the 1 seed or the 2 seed, but you're starting the year off like with Kristaps Porzingis, like his injury, and then I just feel like they won't have their foot on the gas as much throughout the regular season, which makes sense. I mean, that is a championship team. Odds are, after you win a championship, most times you're not going to come out and try to, level up that in the regular season. I think the Warriors in 2016 is a little bit of an anomaly, but I don't think we will see that from Boston. And they'll still be obviously a playoff team. I just don't think the 1 seed will be their objective. 5th, I have Indiana. They were a weird team to gauge because I do think they actually are maybe a little bit better. I was a little questionable about the trade at first because I thought Buddy Hield was a perfect fit next to Tyrese Halliburton. But then, as you watch the playoffs more and more go on, it was like they really needed Pascal Siakam. And no offense to Buddy Hield, but I don't know if they could have got to the conference finals without Pascal Siakam. He was really the main guy for a lot of those. Halliburton was dealing with injuries. You already had Ben Mathurin out, which is going to be nice to get him back. But I think like Siakam was really the driving force that made that possible. I mean, obviously they did have some injuries in their way too, because Milwaukee and New York had their fair share of injuries. But I don't know. I think that needs to get more credit as well. Philadelphia 6 might be questionable, but I do think as much as them adding Paul George maybe helps them out like star power wise, I have some questions because they have a lot of guys that might be considered okay, but they also have a lot of guys where it's like, I'm not really moved by. I mean, still having Kyle Lowry in the rotation, Eric Gordon on the team now, like Andre Drummond can give you good, but he can give you also like equally or even more bad, just like kind of like head scratching plays. But I don't know. I also just think with having Paul George there, it's going to take away from Tyrese Maxey. And I feel like Tyrese Maxey needs to be one of the, he can't have his role diminished, especially at this part in his career. Like Tyrese Maxey still needs to be like that guy that he was last year and even build upon it, I would say. Now you have Embiid and Paul George. Is it going to be like they're the 1-2 combo? Is Maxey just going to revert to a pure point guard, which he can do, but I would like him to be more of like scoring threat, scoring option in the offense. I have the Knicks 7th, and really part of it is because they just have confusion at center right now. That was really their biggest strength last year, is that they had Biggs and Hartenstein and Mitchell Robinson, where they would kind of play their role perfectly, getting offensive boards, making smart defensive plays. Now you lose Hartenstein, and Mitchell Robinson's going to be out for a bit. I know they improved offensively with Karl Anthony Towns, but I just feel like in that system, like with the players they have, I don't know if that's going to generate more success. I think he's obviously still going to thrive and do his thing, but I don't know if it's going to generate as much success in the regular season. And then Miami 8th, they're going to be in the middle. There's really not much to say about the Heat. They're just kind of in the middle once again. Didn't do anything dramatic. They're young guys like Jaquez. I think Bam might have a good year, but they're in the middle. And then 9th, I have Atlanta. So this is like just below like the what you would say is the playoffs. We'll go through play-in predictions though in a bit. 9th, I have Atlanta. I think they do have a better chance to make the playoffs this year, because some teams did kind of fall like they were above them. But I think they're still gonna be okay. The first overall pick, Zach Risher, like he looked pretty good in the first preseason game. So I don't know. They also look like they're kind of having fun as a team, which makes me almost tempted to even put them over Miami. But I'm not gonna go that far. 10th, I have Charlotte. I think they're gonna have a bounce back year because LaMelo's been injured the last few years. Miles Bridges was out for, we all know the reasons why. And I think Brandon Miller is going to be even better. Like, we were watching a preseason game of him, too. Like, his shot looks even quicker, and it looks even smoother. So, if Brandon Miller takes that leap, LaMelo plays how we know he can, it's not too crazy to say the Hornets could make the playoffs. I think maybe they'll need a little bit of luck on their side, but that's definitely a possibility, and I feel like not enough people are really giving them that credit. And then 11th, I got Detroit. Detroit, for the reason I think they're going to bounce back too. Like, just like Charlotte, they had some injuries. I just don't think they're as good as Charlotte. And I think they're going to have more of an incentive to win. If I'm correct, I believe they don't even technically have their pick next year, or it has like a certain protection to it. So I don't know. I think they're definitely going to compete next year. And then number 12, we got my Chicago Bulls. I have them 12th because I do think they'll start off the season okay. I think at the trade deadline, or roughly about, is when they will trade Zach LaVine finally, because I think he'll have to build up his value first, and then he will get traded. Kobe White's going to have a great year. I think Buzelis is going to play great for us. We still got Vucevic, so there's that. But I don't know. I think we're going to be okay. Then after the trade deadline, we'll fall apart. Toronto 13th. This might be surprising because, I think people are expecting maybe a leap from Scotty Barnes again this year, but I don't feel confident really about their team. I know RJ Barrett just had a little injury, and then you got Emmanuel Quickley on the team, and it's just really not a great team for success. Jakob Poeltl even said, like, we're not trying to win every game in the media day. So it's like you have one of your starters saying we're not trying to win every game. That should say it right there. They're probably not going to be a great team this year. Speaking of not great teams, though, I got Brooklyn 14th. Trade away Mikal Bridges. And they just really are a mess right now. I think the only way they could really climb the standings is if, like, Ben Simmons has a resurgence year, but how many years have we said that? So I don't think that's really super likely. If it does happen, yeah, they could be higher, but I'm just not going to put my eggs in that basket until I see it happen. And then 15th, I got the Wizards. They're just bad. Like, there's so much wrong with the Wizards. Hopefully, for Jordan Poole's sake, I guess he can have a bounce back year because he had one of maybe the most embarrassing seasons of all time last year in terms of, like, most mistakes and Shaqtin' moments, whatever. Then in the West is really tough, and I feel like it may even be a little more controversial than the East. And I've even made a few changes, like, even up to, like, yesterday about this. So I'm going to just go ahead and give my Western Conference predictions. So here we go. From 1 to 15, I got Oklahoma City, Sacramento, Denver, Dallas, Memphis, Minnesota, the Clippers, the Suns, Pelicans, the Rockets, the Lakers, San Antonio Spurs, the Warriors, Utah Jazz, and the Portland Trailblazers. So let's start with 1. The Thunder. They were 1 last year. They got better. They're going to be 1 again this year. They get Caruso and Hartenstein. I feel like I don't really have to explain that too much. Now, number 2 with Sacramento is interesting. And originally, I had them hanging around maybe like 6, 7, 8. I'm like, yeah, they maybe will make the playoffs, maybe, but it's a really tough West. But the more I thought about it, I was like, you know what? I think they are going to have a really good record. And they are going to have a really good record because I already predicted they will start off the season well. I think just they have a pretty easy schedule for the most part in their first like 10 games. They could very well go like 7-3, 8-2 even. And that's going to help build momentum moving forward. I think they, as a team, want to bounce back because nobody probably thought they would have missed the playoffs last year after they finally were lighting the beam again for the first time in 17 years it was. So I think everyone thought, oh, they're going to make the playoffs at least. And then it was a disappointment that they didn't. So I think they want to bounce back. I think Coach Mike Brown wants to bounce back. De'Aaron Fox missed some games. Malik Monk missed the end of the year. Like, these are all guys that really want to bounce back. And then DeMar DeRozan, I think he still wants to show, like, I'm not done yet. You know, like, I'm not a finished product, finished player. So there's a lot of vengeance coming with this team. Another reason why I think they will win a lot of regular season games, actually, is because having De'Aaron Fox, who was the clutch player of the year, not this past season, but the year before, and then you have DeMar DeRozan, who was a finalist both of those years, has nothing to do necessarily with the playoffs, and that's what regular season wins is really all about. It's like non-playoff stuff, but those two guys contribute to a lot of wins in close games in the regular season. So if you have both of them together, like, I feel like their wins in close games are going to be astronomically higher than a lot of teams in the association. So with that being said, I do think they will be the 2 seed. Now, it'll still be close. I think like it's only really a few games that separate it, but I just feel like, you know, I think I have like the Kings maybe like, I think I'll have it on here like 52 wins, and then I have like, you know, the 6th seed is only like 3 wins lower. Like, it's not really a big difference, but I definitely think they can. So yeah, I'm going to go with the Kings at 2. And then I got Denver at 3. You know, they're going to be a stable team regardless, even if some people think maybe they got worse this offseason or whatever, they're still going to be in that hunt. I got Dallas at 4. I think getting Clay was a big addition for them. I think that it's going to be a good fit once the season rolls around. I got Memphis at 5. They're a hungry team. You know, they're going to want to get back in the playoff picture. I got Minnesota at 6, mostly because I feel like they are going to start off a little bit slow. You know, the chemistry might not be totally there with Cat out of the lineup. It'll feel a little weird to not have Cat in Minnesota. And then, you know, we bring in a guy like Randall, where it's like, well, how does his game mesh well with Anthony Edwards? How does it mesh well with Rudy Gobert in the front court? So I think with those things said as well, it'll be a little bit of a adjustment. I think they'll figure it out, but it'll take a few games, and you can't really drop any games in the Western Conference. So I think that might do them in to get like a 6th seed. 7th, I got the Clippers. Maybe would even have them higher, but obviously there's always uncertainty like with Kawhi. I do like the role players that they added. I do think that you know, even though they did lose Paul George in the offseason, some people think that'll do them in. I think they got enough pieces around them that they're still going to be a quality team in the Western Conference. And then number 8, I had the Phoenix Suns, which is really hard for me to say because, like, I feel like they had a good offseason. They had about as good of an offseason as you could say. You know, you getting Tyus Jones and Monte Morris as 2 pure point guards to put around 3 other shot creators and Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal. Like, you couldn't ask for anything better. And the only reason I really have him 8th is because, not to question really Mike Budenholzer as a coach, but I feel like you need to bring Bradley Beal off the bench. It's time. You have to do it. That's the only way that this team, I think, is going to reach its full potential. And the way it seems right now is that they're still going to have the same big 3 starting. Like, that's going to weaken the bench so much. It almost feels redundant to a degree of having, you know, one of those point guards out there, because you're going to have so many people with the ball in their hands all the time regardless. Like, it would have to be like Tyus Jones running plays with like Yusuf Nurkic all the time and stuff like that, rather than like feeding guys off like curl cuts, or, you know what I mean? Like, there's not really a whole lot of actions that you can create if you have 3 guys that are looking to come off the action off the ball. And I don't know, like, definitely don't want to see a whole lot of Yusuf Nurkic pick and rolls. But we'll see. I do think they'll still be a top 8 seed. 9th, I have the Pelicans. They're also kind of tough because I do think they got better with not just DeJounte Murray, but also Javonte Green. You know, as a Bulls fan, like that's one of the most underrated pickups of the offseason for anybody. And so, I don't know. I just think with, you know, you get Javonte Green in there, you got DeJounte Murray, but it really comes down to Zion. And if Zion is healthy, then they could even be a little bit higher. If he's not, then they won't even make the playoffs then probably. But even last year he was healthy for most of it and they still barely got in. So I really don't know where to put them, and that's why I put them ninth. I still think they'll be above 500, but I put them ninth. And then I got the Rockets 10th. I think they had a good season last year, but it's so hard because, the record isn't indicative of how good they are. I think they even got better this offseason too, but somebody has to lose games. And that's something people forget with standing predictions all the time, is that, like, yeah, they might be a 500 caliber team, but somebody has to lose games. And if I was looking at the caliber of their team on like a normal like situation, maybe they'd be like a 46-36 team or something like that. But I have them like right at like 500 because, like, well, they got to lose some of these games to these other guys. So that's just how it rolls sometimes. I got the Lakers 11th. Might be unpopular, but they really did nothing all offseason. And I really think this is going to be a season about like LeBron and his son's like story. It'll be like a documentary, whatever. I don't think it's much of a success season. 12th, I got the Spurs. I think they do get better. They made some good draft picks. Getting Stephon Castle, that's a big one that I'm a fan of. I think Julian Champagnie getting more in the rotation is big for them. And getting Chris Paul, that's only going to help those younger guys out a little bit moving forward. So I do think they'll be 12th, though. And then 13th, I have the Warriors. Might be a surprise, too, but they just didn't do anything. To me, yeah, they get Buddy Hield and stuff like that. I'm not really a fan of how I don't think Buddy Hield is going to thrive in the system the same way that Clay did. Getting Kyle Anderson, I'm not really a fan of that. I feel like it's a little redundant too with how much Draymond Green plays to have a Kyle Anderson. And I could very well see him off the team soon. And they just have so many injury concerns on that roster as well. 14th, I have Utah. And 15th, I have Portland. I'll just say them both here because they're both at the bottom. The only reason I have the Jazz higher is that they always start the season off well, and then they just stink it up. Portland has some quality players, but expect some of them to probably be traded as the season goes on. So as we get to awards, I'll announce them in the opposite way. Won't spend too much time on this. But based on like everything I've shown, we'll start off with Coach of the Year, which is really just another term for the Most Improved Team Award or Most Impressive Team Award. I'm going to go with Cleveland's Kenny Atkinson because I feel like if Cleveland is the 2 seed, people are probably going to be like, whoa, we weren't expecting that. Sure, you could give it to Jamal Mosley as well for Orlando at 3, but I feel like the jump of Cleveland to 2 would have people thinking they go from playoff team to contender. Whereas Orlando could be the 3 seed there. They probably would still think of them as just a playoff team. Other than that, it could be Mark Daigneault again, but I don't think they would do that back-to-back. And speaking of Cleveland, I also think they'll have the clutch player of the year in Donovan Mitchell. I think he's poised to bounce back. I don't know if you guys saw that survey where they picked the best shooting guards in the league from GMs, and some people picked Anthony Edwards, some picked Devin Booker. Some people picked Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who's technically not a shooting guard, and Steph Curry, who's technically not a shooting guard, and Luka Doncic, who's technically not a shooting guard, and Jaylen Brown, who's technically not a shooting guard, and Derek White, who's significantly worse than Donovan Mitchell. That has to be fueling him, and on top of a lot of other things too. So I feel like when push comes to shove down late in games, like he's going to be hitting big shots this season. The most improved player might be kind of boring, but I think it'll be Wemby, actually. God, I'm talking so fast. I think it'll be Wemby, though. He might not have as unique of a most improved player story because it's Wemby. He's good, He's in his second year as well. But I'm really just thinking about it, and it's usually you can kind of get an idea of who's going to make that jump on certain teams. And the only players I get that feeling from are on really bad teams. The Spurs still won't be a good team, but I feel like if it's a team that's close to the playoffs for a decent amount of the year, then they'll have a chance to get in, or to get the award. Markkanen had that a few years ago, so I'm going to go with Wemby on this one. Then we got Sixth Man of the Year, going with Ben Mathurin on the Pacers. And I really wanted to pick Naz Reid too. And honestly, if someone picked Naz Reid, I would not mind. I went a little bit different, because I feel like people probably aren't going to be saying Ben Mathurin as much as Naz Reid. And I think he'll kind of bounce back. I could honestly, like, maybe a hot take, I think Siakam will probably be the leading scorer on their team this year. And I could see Ben Mathurin being the second leading scorer on that team as well if Halliburton reverts like more into like a Chris Paul type of role. So it's possible. Defensive player of the year, I got to go with Bam. I think Bam will actually win it. And I go with Bam because if you look at that Heat roster, like they don't really have too much of a defensive identity on paper that they once did. And I think, honestly, the biggest reason they would get into the playoffs is because of his defensive leadership. Rookie of the year, a little biased. I'm going with my guy, Modest Buzelis. And I kind of thought about this a little bit, but I think he's just going to play so good to start the year. He's going to basically force his way into the starting lineup over Patrick Williams. It's inevitable. It'll happen. Yeah, you could say, well, Billy Donovan doesn't really, he loves Patrick Williams. We know he loves Patrick Williams, but we also know that our GM loves Modest Buzelis too. So I think if it comes down to it, they're going to put the better player in between those guys. Buzelis is that guy. He'll have a great opportunity this year too. And then my MVP of the season, I'm going with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I just think if the Thunder are that high, they'll probably usually sometimes they might give it to someone who got really close the year before. Maybe some people thought, oh, he should have been it. I mean, Shai was second in MVP last year. And while I still do think Jokic is a better player than Shai, I think if Shai leads his team to the first seed and he's playing like maybe he did last season or something similar, they're probably going to give him the award this time, especially because he hasn't won one. So those are my predictions for the awards. Moving into the play-in. Starting with the East 7 and 8 seed, I got the Knicks beating the Heat. Should be pretty straightforward. The 10-9, 9-10 in the East, I guess that kind of spoiled it because I had the 10 winning Charlotte over Atlanta. And then to win that 8 seed game, I'm going to go with Miami over Charlotte, which is not anything maybe too exciting, but regardless, still 7 and 8 stays the same. Just Charlotte would beat Atlanta. And then in the West, 7 seed Clippers beat the 8 seed Suns. I got the 9 seed Pelicans beating the 10 seed Rockets. And then I got the 8 seeded Suns beating the 9 seeded Pelicans. Same thing. It's just really hard to, when you're making these standings predictions, most of it is kind of based on who you already think is going to be better. And I think that will be the case, at least for the Western Conference. Most of the East, too, in the play-in. So starting with the East playoffs, first round, 1 seeded Bucks, 8 seeded Heat. This will be a sweep. I got the Bucks winning in 4. Just like 2021, I think they're kind of going to make a statement with this series. And the Heat just really are not. They're not the same team I don't think they were a few years ago either. The 2 seeded Cavs and the 7 seeded Knicks, I'm actually going with the Cavs in 6. That is weird how both of those rhyme. Okay, the second one I was not trying to rhyme there, but it just so happened. I think that the Cavs have more defensive-minded bigs. It's going to make it hard for Cat. And I just feel like the Knicks' identity is going to take some time to figure out this year. I think this is it needs a year to gel type of year now since making the Cat trade. So I think the Cavs will win this in 6. The 3-seeded Magic and the 6-seeded 76ers, believe it or not, I'm going to go with the Magic in 6. I think that they're kind of playing with house money even as a higher seed. And a team that plays with house money maybe is the underdog as a higher seed. They're going to start off on their home court. Well, they're probably going to win that first game. And from there, the pressure starts to mount. They're going to be at home again. The fans are going to start chirping. And I know Paolo's going to play well. I know Franz Wagner is going to play well. They also want, I think, to bounce back from previous year where maybe in the last game they didn't show up as well. And for all we know, Embiid could have an injury. Paul George could stink it up in the playoffs again. There's a lot of factors for the Sixers. And then the 4-5 in the East, Boston and Indiana. Give me the Celtics in 6. With Indiana healthy, I think they'll make it a little bit more challenging than last year in the conference finals, but I still think the Celtics will win at 6. In the West first round, 1-seeded Thunder, 8-seeded Suns. This might be surprising, but I'm going to go with a sweep again. It's very possible that the Suns could make this a good series, and I never want to bet against Kevin Durant, but man, if he's in a playoff series against Oklahoma City, I could very well see something similar happening to him as what's happened to Kyrie against Boston, where the fans are going to be in his ear, loud, angry, frustrated, probably calling him names, and it could get to him. Like we know Kevin Durant already, like on social media, sometimes he lets things get to him. So it's very possible. And if he's not on his A game, this Suns team doesn't have a chance, really. So I'm going to go with the Thunder in a sweep, actually. I'm going to go with the 2-seeded Nuggets over the 7-seeded Clippers in 5. I do think the Clippers will win a game. It could even be a more entertaining series, but of course, like there's so much question about the Clippers' health issues. So because of that, I'm not going to put my eggs in their basket. I do think they'll avoid a sweep, though. And yeah, then we get the 3-seeded Kings and 6-seeded Timberwolves. This would be a really good matchup. I'm not going to lie. And I'm going to go with the Kings in 7. That might be shocking, but I do think they will strike first in this series, being the home team. And they're going to remember from a few years ago when they were in a Game 7. I think De'Aaron Fox is going to play a lot better. He's going to step up. And I feel like if someone like that steps up, maybe DeMar DeRozan will also play pretty solid in that game as well. It's mostly a second option, because that really doesn't happen around him much. So I'm going to go with the Kings in 7 over the Timberwolves. Might be shocking, surprising. And then the 4-5 in the West, Dallas and Memphis. I also have it going to 7, but I'm going to take Dallas, which is unfortunate because I think Memphis would be having a great bounce back year, but I don't know. It's just really hard to bet against Luka and Kyrie. They just got to the finals last year. I think they're hoping to have similar success this year. To have him as a first-round exit would be kind of shocking. Now the East second round, 1-seeded Bucks, 4-seeded Celtics. I'm taking the Bucks in 6. Last season, when these teams played, like there were a few games where the Bucks really looked like a better team than Boston. We already know Boston's going to be dealing with like some injuries this year, and on top of that, the Bucks are a hungry team. Dame is looking for his first title. The Bucks, even though they won a title with Giannis and Middleton and stuff, I think they want at least one more to kind of prove to everyone like that wasn't a fluke. Some people call that the hospital ring. Like, I don't think they want that to be their only like claim to fame. Then we got the 2-seeded Cavs and the 3-seeded Magic. Rematch from last year, but I think the Cavs will win this one at 6. Obviously they weren't 100% healthy last year. I think that they'll have a little bit more confidence knowing that they beat this team too. But they also will know, like, if they're in the second round, doesn't mean anything. They've been in the second round before. Donovan Mitchell as well. Like, I think he wants to go further. I think you can kind of tell in his voice, like, a conference finals appearance or further would be, big in the next step for what's to come for him. The West second round, 1-seeded Thunder, 4-seeded Mavericks. I got this series flipped. I think the Thunder will win it in 6 as opposed to last year. The Thunder got better, and the Mavericks did too, I would say. But I think the Thunder's additions really didn't cost them anything. I think they were really close in a lot of the games last year, and so because of that, I do think the Thunder will actually win this in 6. The 2-seeded Nuggets and the 3-seeded Kings. This could easily be a bad matchup for the Nuggets, but I'm going to be safe, and I'm going to say my fault. I had the wrong seeding. I said it the other way around. The 2-seeded Kings and the 3-seeded Nuggets. But I still think the Nuggets will end up winning this. I don't think they would allow themselves to lose in the second round again, especially like in less games. I know the Kings are a better team. They're an improved team, but I don't know. I just feel like the Nuggets will pull it off, And then in the East Finals, we got the 1-seeded Bucks and the 2-seeded Cavs. Give me the Bucks in 6. It would be nice to see the Cavs go to the finals for Donovan Mitchell's sake, but I do think the Bucks are a better team when fully healthy. If Dame gets that close, I mean, he's only been that far once in his whole career. I think that he would kind of smell it. He would smell that, what, like maybe we could like this could be the run. So I think if they get that far, that's what's going to happen. And I got the Bucks going to the finals. Now, if we look at the Western Conference, 1-seeded Thunder, 3-seeded, I forgot to mark that down, the 3-seeded Denver Nuggets. Like I said, I made some of these changes the other day. So I was thinking about having maybe the Kings a little lower than the Nuggets in the standings, but made that change last second. But I think the Thunder will win this as well in 7 games, which is tough for the Nuggets, but I do think that they did kind of take a step back maybe this year, whereas the Thunder, they, improved, really. Like, they took a step up, and it really didn't cost them much of anything either. So I'm going to definitely go with them, which would be quite a run, because if the Thunder had to go through Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook to get back to the NBA Finals, that would be nuts. And in the NBA Finals, we got 2 1 seeds, the Bucks and the Thunder. I got the Bucks in 6. Yep, I think the Thunder getting to that stage would be huge for them, but they still are a young team. And I think that is a stage that those guys have really never been to, except like Alex Caruso, aside, but that was again in the bubble. The Bucks, a lot of them have been there. I think Giannis will be huge in that series as well, because I don't think there's anybody that can stop him on OKC. I think as much as I really wanted to pick Dame as a Finals MVP for this too, because that would be such a feel-good moment for Dame, I just don't know if he will be like the main cause of them like winning. I think he'll still have a really good series, though. He'll have definitely games where like he looks maybe even better than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. But I just think that, with how this matchup is, the Thunder, they don't really have a whole lot of size. And the size that they do have, it's not like physically demanding guys like Chet, Isaiah Hartenstein, like Jay Will. Like, they can try their best against Giannis. They're not going to stop Giannis. And especially if Chris Middleton is healthy as well, because when Chris Middleton was healthy last time we saw him throughout a playoff run, he looked great. And now he wouldn't even be asked to do as much because you have a guy like Damian Lillard next to him. So I feel like with all those things considered, give me the Bucks to win the championship. And I got Giannis being the Finals MVP. This would be quite the season. A lot of uniqueness all around, but I don't know, man. I think we're in for a season that's going to be a little bit unpredictable. Maybe I slipped on some teams. Like, maybe you might say, well, you have Boston out in the second round. Yeah, I do. Just because I think like the Bucks, they didn't really get a fair shot at them last year. I think if they get a fair shot at them this year, it will definitely be a series for sure. I think that's one of the teams that would definitely give them a run for their money. I do think Cleveland is poised to make a deeper run. When you have a leader like Donovan Mitchell who has his eye on the prize and, doesn't fret, doesn't look back or anything like that, like, they're going to be in the hunt every single time. And I feel like he's all about improvement. He's all about taking the next step. And especially like right now, like, this is probably the start of his prime. So I think we're in to see like the next best years of him as well. The Thunder, I think the Thunder, like I said, they're going to take a step up too. It could even win the championship. And then Denver, Denver's going to be in that hunt as well because, you got a guy like Jokic. He could single-handedly win you series. He almost single-handedly beat the Timberwolves last year, and that was a really good team. So one could argue that maybe some of these other teams, maybe they're not as poised to beat Denver as the Timberwolves were last season. But I don't know. We're just going to have to see how it all goes. But, that's basically going to do it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. I don't know why I was pointing up here. I meant to point like down here. But, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. I feel like I was talking like really fast for a lot of this episode. But like I said, I know this episode is long. I probably won't talk as much in almost any other episode throughout the season. But yeah, I think the episodes will be shorter. Also, the season might be shorter as well, but there is a reason to that if so. So you'll definitely have to stay tuned for that. But you should be sure to turn that notification bell on right now so that you don't miss any episodes. Because I think last season, maybe near the end, like some Bullony Basketball, like maybe got a little bit like tiring because there's so many other things I'm doing on the channel. But I think we'll make it like fun this season, and yeah, we'll just see how it goes. Like why not just go with the flow, have some fun. I'll have a lot of guests on, so you already know that. But yep, hopefully you guys enjoyed. Thank you guys for watching, and I'm out. Peace.